I see you're pretty tired already for the afternoon. Hello.
Hello.
How y'all doing? Well, I'm actually going to do something a bit different for this my session that I did for the other one. I'm going to start off just a little bit different. Now I am going to actually get into all the stuff that we talked about as well. But I actually have this question that I want you to answer first. And it is simply this.
Turn that so.
Yeah. Right. Should women be believed?
What?
Yeah, easy question. Easy answer. That's my question for you today.
Should women be believed?
Should women be believed?
Okay. Well, that's certainly a question we haven't dealt with yet, so.
Yeah. Should women be believed? Who wants to go first? The name and 1 second. Yeah, 1 second. Hold on. Just an easy question to open up. 1 second. Hold on. Yeah. Let them have it. The question of the day start off as should women be believed? Your name is Sydney. Thank you, Sydney.
I honestly just think it really depends on the situation. Obviously in our society today, a lot of women aren't believed when they should be. So I think that people really just need to consider the facts when they're talking about should this woman be believed. But I think that a lot of things are misconstrued in situations where women aren't really believed at all.
Okay. So it depends on the situation. Should women be believed? Name?
My name's Gina.
Gina?
I think women should be believed unless there's any reason not to.
Unless there is a reason not to.
Yeah.
And yes, and like what exactly would be one of those reasons?
I don't know. I don't have any specific ones. Just, I think that women should always be believed unless, like,
Unless what? Unless what?
you have a very solid reason, like from her past, or
Like what?
like if she's lied about something big in the past.
So, kind of like if a like woman has lied about something in the past, and then she said something today, and then like we should not believe her today.
No.
Is that what you're saying? Or?
I think you should consider whether or not she's telling the truth.
Okay.
It shouldn't be automatically discounted.
So like essentially, like we should start off believing her. But like only change like if there's some kind of thing that changes that. Is that what you're saying? I'm just trying to get that. Okay. Thank you. Should women be believed? Your name?
Jaden.
Gina?
You can't, Jaden.
Jaden?
I thought you said Gina?
Oh.
Jaden.
Jane, I'm sorry.
I don't think you can blindly believe them just for the sake that there is a lot of incidents on women crime, and you can't say both are right or neither can be right if they're opposing views. So you can't immediately say someone is the one that we should believe because there's two parties and both of them are women.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So like essentially, especially since like there actually can be women on women situations. So like one person is saying something, yes, another saying something else, and therefore, you actually simply cannot believe the woman because they are two different stories. Thank you. Should women be believed? I have not heard a fellow yet.
I have, I'm here for many men and guys.
So like I'm gonna let y'all volunteer first before I
Be brave.
point you out. Should women be believed? Thank you. And your
I
name?
think,
Your name?
my name is Hadi,
Hadi.
and I think everyone should be believed unless there is like something that's prove it they are lying.
Okay, and like something like what? Yeah,
Like
what
if
would-
if a girl stole something and she is in cameras and she said she didn't do it but she is in cameras, so
Okay.
that's example.
You know, so, and if there is like hard evidence, like which like actually undercuts her story,
Yeah,
then you should not believe her.
yeah,
But like, if there is no hard evidence, then you should believe her. Is that what you're saying?
I will try to like see if it like if I can believe it or not. Like there is some stuff that are impossible. Like if a woman like tell me she is in Detroit and after 10 minutes she tell me she is in Mount Pleasant, that I cannot believe that.
Okay, cool, thank you very much. Should women be believed? Come on. Spelling the hood. What's your name? Chuck. Should women be believed? Yeah, why? You were saying that we should believe her, but not really believe her, like only based on the circumstances. Is that quite it or not? I guess I'm just trying to
It just like
make sure I'm clear.
It depends on like the circumstance for like people, like also depends on like how well you know someone.
Okay.
Like if I didn't like know like that person that well, and then like they said something or said they did something and when they didn't do it, that time they didn't, then I wouldn't believe that person the next time that they tell me something.
Okay.
Like there's some that like knew kind of well, and then like the woman that knew well, and she lied, and then I found out she did it, and then I would like still believe her and have faith, and like she would tell me the truth again.
Okay.
It starts to become a constant, and then I would start to not believe it.
Like so, essentially, we should not believe women, except for certain circumstances and factors having to be involved. Like, is that?
No, I'm not saying that like there should, I'm saying they should like believe in them, like they like say something, or do something, you should believe them. But like, unless they give you a reason to not believe, then like depending on the relationship with the person is whether you'll continue to believe that person or whether you're giving that person another chance to like regain your trust in a sense.
So like essentially that equation should believe women, like except for like when like there are some of the other reasons that make her less believable. Okay. Yes. Well, yes. I just wanted to be clear. Should women be believed? One more. Should women be believed? Name?
Maya, I walked in late, so what's the pretense of the question?
I'm just asking you a question. Should women be believed?
I guess like my question is like why women specifically? Like I feel like most times like when it comes to situations where it's like a he said, she said, like between a man and a woman, like the woman is often not believed because of whatever preconceived notions, and then so like I guess my question is like what's the context behind the question?
And my question is, should women be believed?
Why should women not be believed?
My question is, should women be believed? That's the question on the table.
Should men be believed?
She might answer that later on, but right now I'm asking,
Okay.
Should women be believed?
If they're believable, sure.
If they are believed.
But I mean, belief is all subject to your own perception. So like,
And so they should be believed or not, or like what are you like trying to tell me?
I mean, you can believe them or you cannot. That's your own. Belief has nothing to do with fact. Like if they're telling the truth or not, whether you believe them or not doesn't determine whether it happened or not.
So I'm asking you in
Yeah,
particular.
yes and no.
Yes and no. And so what exactly does yes and no mean?
Yeah, if you want to believe them,
I'm talking about you.
if they convince me or if I believe
So-
it's true, but I don't always, I mean, I can't say I believe all women all the time, but I can't say I don't believe all women all the time.
Okay. So like if they convince you, then you will believe them.
I mean, not
that
necessarily
it?
convinced. I mean, some things like you believe, like if a woman says, you know, like. I
Like
don't
what?
know.
Like what?
Like if a woman said, hey, like, had a rough day today. I can't tell her that she didn't have a rough day today. I'm not her. I can't determine what's rough and what's not rough to her.
So like you would believe her, you know, like if she said
Sure,
had a rough day.
for her, she had a rough day.
Okay. Cool. Thank you very much. Thank you. And yes, and like what's your name again? I'm sorry.
Maya.
Maya. Yes, and she actually raised a very good point. That is because like this is all I said. Should women be believed? That's all. Elliot, I did not mention sexual assault or rape or whatever the context or women on women crime, etc. None of that. All I asked was, should women be believed? And automatically, there were certain things that jumped into your mind. Certain assumptions that you had about this question. And all I did was say, should women be believed? And I'll let you take that wherever it was that you wanted to take it. Right? I did not have to tell you, think about sexual assault claims. For many people in their heads already, that's already embedded there. That's already embedded there. The history of women not being believed on the issue of sexual assault is already embedded in this question, even though I don't say it at all. Even though I don't say it at all. Why is that? It is something called context. It's something called context. In 2018, we are so actually having like this incredible sort of conversation about like at least like how to deal so actually with like these kinds of claims of sexual assault, etc. The Me Too movement, and it is already on everybody's mind, walking around, even when I don't say it, because of the context of our time. Because of the context of our time. There are certain things that we don't have to say, but we say them anyway. This is what happens when it comes to journalism. When it comes to how it is we frame stories, ask questions, answer questions, present facts, verify facts. Even when we don't say something, we are saying something. Even when we don't say something, we are saying something. On the issue of sexual assault, on the issue of rape, of that race, and so many other issues. Politics, you name it. Even when we don't say it specifically, we are still saying it because there is a context in which our audience is taking it in. Yes, let me say something real quick about the
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit that out.
yes,
Okay.
yes, let me show you something about context.
Oh, yeah, you want, oh,
Yeah.
I think you can show it here. Like,
Yeah. Then I'll get into your other stuff. So I wanted to.
oh, you know what, I can see now.
Yeah. Yes, I want you to watch this commercial very carefully. Short commercial. You've probably seen it before, but I want you to watch it very carefully for an incredibly important journalistic principle at play. All right? We talk about framing, we talk about context, etc. Just a simple commercial.
Is this my constant farm everything for everyone those moments? This is ridiculous! There's one of things.
Is this my car? What? This is ridiculous.
This can't be happening!
This can't be happening.
Oh, it's happening, sweetheart. Oh, it's happening, sweetheart.
Shut up.
Shut up!
Ah!
That's why State Farm is there.
What another day.
With car insurance when things go wrong, but also here with car loans to help life go right.
Again, show it again real quick. Watch it and think about the journalistic principle at play. Think about it. It is right there.
State Farm. Hey, Dad. Is this my car? State Farm everything for everyone those moments? This is ridiculous! There's one of things.
Is this my car? What? This is ridiculous.
This can't be happening!
This can't be happening.
Oh, it's happening, sweetheart. Oh, it's happening, sweetheart.
Shut up.
Shut up!
Ah!
That's why State Farm is there.
What another day.
With car insurance when things go wrong, but also here with car loans to help life go right.
All right. What is the lesson for journalists in that? In that insurance commercial, what is the lesson for journalists in that? Your name?
Cameron.
Cameron.
And the same words can have completely different meanings.
The same words can have completely different meanings. The same words can have a completely different meaning based solely on the context in which you place them. You can completely change the meaning of a word or a question by changing the context in which you place that word or context. The meaning of a fact, of a verified fact, changes its meaning based upon the context in which you place it. Which is why facts alone are not enough. You can have the right facts, but send the wrong message. your facts can be verified, but you can end up misleading anyway. If you don't have the context, the proper context in which to place what it is that you are saying or writing or presenting. That is how so much misinformation about so many people happen. That is how, so actually when it comes to stereotypes, when it comes to so-called fake news, a lot of misleading information is based on real, verified fact. That's why it is so enticing. That's why it is so effective. Because like all that person has to do is say, yes, but these facts are right. These facts that I have presented are accurate. These words, Kelly, these words that I'm saying are true. But the message that it sends is misleading because it has been taken out of context or not placed into the proper context, or because that writer actually did not take the time to actually understand the context. That's how myths happen. And so, yes, as soon as like somebody will actually ask you a question like that, and then you should like ask, why is that person asking me that question that way? What's your name again? I'm sorry.
Maya.
Maya. Yes, and that's what she asked me. That actually really was a good question. Why are you asking me that question that way? Why are you framing it that way? And there, so actually might be like a very good reason why. It actually might be in context, or it might be out of context. But that is something that you should consider. Not just that that fact itself is accurate. That's where we go wrong. And this is where like we've like actually gone wrong a lot on the issue of crime and race and black men in particular. We've gone way wrong on that because people spout accurate facts but completely out of context, or yes, let me give you like a little bit of background. Really, like I've been doing like journalism for like past like 23 years or so, and I've been dealing with like issues of criminal justice and race, crime, and like all sorts of things for a long time. And I have actually gotten sort of reader feedback, at least from like everywhere. Yes, like every single state you can think of. And like almost every time that I actually write about criminal justice issues, I hear two facts from many readers, again and again and again and again. This is what they do. This is what they say. They say, yeah.
That one works a little better.
It's awesome, yeah. They tell me 6% and 50%. They say this about black men. They tell me again and again and again and again that black men make up roughly 6% of the population overall. Roughly 6% of the population overall, but account for about 50% of the murders. Let me say that again. This is what readers, send me. But every single time that I write about race and criminal justice, this is what they say. Black men represent only 6% of the overall population, but they account for about 50% of all the murders. So, why is it, do you think that they actually send me those numbers like that? Like those two numbers in particular? Any guesses? Didn't they get it?
Ms. Gina, maybe to try and validate what you're saying.
Yes. Yes. They focus on these to try to invalidate, yes, every other argument, every other thing. Like when I actually write about like Trayvon Martin and that tragedy, they say, yes, but black men, only 6% of the overall population, 50% of all the murders. And so therefore, George Zimmerman is not the real threat for black men. The real threat, the only real threat is other black men. When I write about cop shootings, they do the same thing. They send this back to me again, exactly the same thing. Why are you talking about cop shootings when black men only represent 6% of the overall population, but 50% of the murders? Like clockwork, these facts. And these facts are pretty much true. Pretty much true. It's like, just like State Farm, for instance. Again, you can have facts, you can take them out of context, and send a completely different message or a misleading message, even though that your underlying numbers are actually accurate. This is what happens again and again and again and again and again. This is to say, stop worrying about Trayvon Martin. Stop worrying about cops and unarmed men being beaten or shot or killed. Because that really doesn't matter. That's not really the issue. The issue is scary black dudes out here. Scary black dudes out here. That's the problem. But again, when it comes to context, anytime that anybody is going to write a story, any kind of story on any kind of subject, on sexual assault, on race, on real estate, whatever it is, you have to consider the context. Did they place it in the proper context? Are they trying to get us closer to the truth, or are they trying to invalidate other factors and arguments? Framing matters. Context matters. Facts matter, yes. They need to be accurate, but facts alone are not enough. Facts alone are not enough. true fact can mislead out of context. A true fact can mislead out of context, if it's out of context. That's why facts alone for journalists, and also like for like folks like who actually read news, don't stop with just that fact itself was correct. Just like the State Farm commercial showed us, you can have the same words, but completely different meaning. Yes, it's like, wow, like this is true. Yes, let me show you what else is true. At least like for the latest numbers that I saw, yes, I think for either 2015 or 2016, you know, these are lagging numbers. And so, like roughly about, you know, like 7,000, so that black dudes got like word like either killed or killed someone in that year. Roughly 7,000. Roughly 7,000. So, here's another number. In context, again. So like this number again, I mean, yeah, so like that roughly, so like 14,000, so that murders overall happened that year, roughly. Yes, again, these are rough estimates, these are close. Yeah, so like overall, just like in the entire country, 14,000. Out of that 14,000, that roughly 7,000 were black dudes. And like, oh my God, that's incredible. Oh my God, there's something really scary going on here. But if you change the context just a little, or understood the context just a little, the meaning changes. Yeah, so like this 50% represents roughly 14,000. This 6% represents roughly 22 million. This 50% represents only 14,000. This 6% represents roughly 22 million. Which means that out of 22 million black men that year, roughly 7,000 were involved in a murder one way or another.
Is that statistic you gave us about 50% of murders were, does that mean like the black men were murdered or they were the murderers?
Both, yes.
Oh, they were just involved?
Yes, both.
Oh, okay.
Both, yeah, that's a good question. Yes, yes. Yeah, so again, this 6% means that there are roughly 22 million black men in the country. Roughly 22 million. This is the number involved in a murder somehow, 7,000. So what percent of 22 million is 7,000? Any guesses? Any guesses? Yes, she said this. Yes, 22 million. Out of 22 million, roughly 7,000. 0.005%. Somebody did the math. 0.005%. Something like that. In other words, more than 99.9% are not involved in this thing. Right? More than 99.9% of black dudes are not involved in murder, are not involved in these bad things, are not here at all. That is the broader context. But if you take it out and then you frame it differently and say, oh my God, only 6% of the population represents 50% oh my God, then there must be some crazy, awful thing going on about black men overall. When, in fact, that number means that more than 99%. When that number means that more than 99.9% are not involved in that kind of stuff. And yet, the stereotype of black men and crime sticks. Anyway, because of how we frame these discussions, because of how we frame these stories, it sticks anyway. Let me go like a little bit deeper for you. When it comes to white men. Yes. Yeah, so, and I'm actually going to change up the frame for you. Right? I'm going to change the context for you. This time I'm going to talk about white men and crime. And mass shootings, for instance. Roughly 2/3 of all mass shootings that we've seen. Yeah, it's somewhere like around like 66 or 67% are done by white men. Roughly 2/3. And let me tell you the difference between this kind of crime and this kind of crime. This kind of crime is almost always between people who know each other. Almost always between people who know each other. Almost always. Not only that, when that extremely tiny amount of black dudes actually commits murder, 90% of the time it involves another black dude. So again, it is an extremely tiny number, and then 90% of the time within that tiny number, they are happening among other black dudes. Not white people, not white women, not white men, not anybody else, but people who know each other. So again, we start off with a tiny, tiny number, and even within that tiny, tiny number, 90% know each other, black dudes. With this number, a lot of these mass shootings are random. Random. Which means that they happen in college classrooms, unfortunately. They happen in malls. They happen in movie theaters. They happen in elementary schools. Which means that here, your only sin has to be being at the wrong place at the wrong time. It is the scariest kind of crime. Simply because you cannot dodge it. Simply because you don't know that it's coming. That's actually scary crime for all of us. That's actually scary crime for all of us. And yet, when we talk about these issues, when we talk about race and crime, we hardly ever hear anybody say, okay, maybe there should be racial profiling of white dudes walking in the malls. We never hear that. Maybe there should be racial profiling of white dudes walking into this classroom. We never hear that. Even though, again, when it comes to the scariest, hardest to predict crime, they committed the most. But when it comes to this kind of crime, This is personal crime. This is brother on brother. This is friend on friend. This is man on wife. This is neighborhood rival on neighborhood rival. And all those things are tragic. And those are things that we actually should actually try to find a way to solve better, for sure. But again, you have to know people and do certain things in order to be caught up with this. All you have to do to be caught up in this is go shopping with your girlfriends or your boyfriends at the mall. And yet, again, what we do is we take this personal, painful, tragic crime and use it to paint black dudes as, oh my God, they are scary, let's stay away from them, these are monsters. We also do that something similar, by the way, with Muslims, for instance. Same thing, oh my God, might be a terrorist. Same thing. Take these small handful of things and on these particular groups, say that says something about all of them. That says something about their culture. That says something awful about who they are. And this is personal and painful stuff that the vast majority of Americans will actually never see. This is the scary stuff because it can be anybody at any time, no matter what it is we're doing. And yet, we don't make the same associations between white men and crime. That says something about the way that we are framing our facts. It says something about the way that we think about context. We change the context based on the race or the religion of the perpetrator. That's what we do again and again and again. Journalists have been doing it for a long time. Journalists have been doing that for a long time. We have been screwing that up for you for a very long time. We have been. That's what we've been doing because we have not considered the context enough. And also, especially here, is there evidence that we actually know not to do that. There should not be any sort of racial profiling of white dudes. No, it shouldn't be. It would be wrong. It would be wrong. Clearly, it would be wrong. This too is also a very small number overall. Like when you actually look at the number of shootings, that's also something that's rare. It's scary, but also, again, rare. And we rightly do not associate all white dudes with crime. That's how it should be done. This is the proper way to do it, to not associate the entire group with the actions of a tiny portion of that group. That's how it should be done. This is how we do it with white dudes. But for some strange reason, when it comes to black dudes or Muslims, we say, well, that says something about their culture. These are some scary jokers we have to really watch out for. And as journalists, this is what we've been doing. This is what we have been taught. which brings me to something a little bit more personal. Yes, I'm gonna tell you about my family a bit. Now, and this is what I actually want you to do. Like, I'm actually going to actually tell you their stories. I'm gonna actually put their names up on the board. Excuse me, Ellie, and I'm like, yes, and I sort of actually want you to tell me, Ellie, which of them sort of like actually represents Ellie, like the most sort of prominent image of black men. All right. Start with my brother, my oldest brother. In April 1982, he killed a man. He actually stabbed him, dozens of times. It was a really bad event. He actually faced the death penalty for a while, but then he was actually given a life sentence. He served 32 years in prison. He got out in 2014. That's my oldest brother. My second oldest brother, Doug. He actually manages my two daughters, Chloe and Halle Bailey, who are actors and singers and all that kind of stuff. He actually manages their careers. Yes, in fact, and he actually helped to actually land them on Beyonce's new label. That's my second oldest brother. My next brother is Willie. He actually owns 2 fitness centers in Washington, D.C. And he was like this air traffic controller for 20 years. Yes, after Willie is me. I'm the journalist and etc. My next brother, Josh. He is a preacher. And he also actually works in this plant. I'm talking like actually building trucks. So he's a manufacturing guy. Yes, this next person is at least we call him that Smooch. He is my oldest nephew, but he was raised like a brother. He is currently serving a 25-year sentence for manslaughter. During this, he and a friend tried to actually rob some sort of fellow drug dealers. And then during the course of that, one of them got shot. Yeah, so he's serving 25 years in prison for that. My next brother, Zadok. For a long period of his life, somewhere between 10 to 15 years, that he was in and out of prison and jail. He's now married with kids, etc. Different life now. But at least for a long time, he was also in and out of prison on drug crimes, etc. Those kind of things. Let's see. Oh, excuse me. And it's Joseph. He is a car salesman. Yes, and And so they're pretty good at it. Yes, then there's James. He's actually serving this 16-year prison sentence right now for his involvement in bank robbery. Simply because he actually took my nephew out, to the place. Then he actually picked him up after the robbery. Yeah, so like he was an accessory. Is why he's in it for 16 years. And my youngest brother, Jordan. He's actually serving 20 years, like in the federal prison for a ton of different crimes, for kidnapping, for attempted murder, for armed robbery. There's a long list of stuff. So like essentially, he actually just pleaded, to everything. Then they rolled it into like this 20-year prison sentence in the Fed. So my question, which one of them most represents the most prominent image of black men in media today?
In the media, I would say that Jordan the youngest one.
Wow.
Just because the media does represent black men as the most represented for doing all those kinds of crimes, even though obviously it's not for you to see with the numbers, but that's just how the media represents those crimes. Because they tend to, like, if they're telling a story about a white man who committed a crime, they just say, oh, this man did this. But then if they're gonna tell a story about a black man doing it, they will specifically say, like, it was a black man in the story. Essentially, like, they tend to bring in race when it's not white men.
Okay. Which one represents the most prominent image of black men in media today? Yes. What's your name again? Yes, like Cindy said, Jordan. Your name?
Jacob.
Jacob?
Could say the Moochie was the most dramatic story. Stabbing the guy a lot. It has a very impressive look at that.
Yeah. And simply because like it is so salacious, essentially. Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. Your name?
Jordan.
Jordan. Okay.
I would say probably
Smooch.
Second,
Yeah, why Smooch?
I think a lot of times, like, black men are considered to be kind of like gang members and like have drug stuff going on.
Yeah. Good, thank you. Your name?
Alec, and Zodak?
Zadok, yeah.
Zadok, so I feel like probably him just because, like you said that he had been in and out of jail for, a couple years or for multiple crimes, so like in a story of some sort, I feel like that would be brought up more than like anything else, like his background, like, oh, he's been in and out of jail multiple times, so should we believe him now, or, so.
Cool, thank you. Thoughts? Anyone else? Which one of them represents the most prominent image of black men in the media today? Some said Moochie, some said Scoop, some said Zadok, some said Jordan. Any different answers? Think about this list. Think about this list. And also think about the ones we highlighted and why. Think about it. Why is that? Julia?
All of the people that were pointed out were, have been incarcerated at a certain time, and because of like racism, like institutionalized racism, that makes the most sense. That's what we're growing up with, so that's what we know. So that's what we do.
Cool, thank you very much. Think about this and tell me why. These are 10 guys from the same house. These are 10 guys from the same neighborhood, from the same spot. Some of them did something over here, some of them did something over there, but the ones that really stand out to us and make an indelible mark are the ones, like as you just said, who have been incarcerated, who have done something awful. These are the ones that stand out. These are the ones that stand out. Let's not forget that there are actually good stories up here. There are actually good stories among black men right in this room, by the way. Right here. But when it comes to how we frame race and crime, the ones who leave the mark are those who do wrong, not those who do good. Because of the way that we have been framing these issues in the media, the ones who do good, we sort of, no biggie. The ones who do something awful represent all black men. Not Doug, not Willie, not the journalist, not the preacher, not the car salesman, but the one who has committed murder. That's the one who represents all black dudes. The drug dealer, oh my God, drugs. Drugs and crime and black dudes, oh my God. I mean, obviously, that's obviously the case, right? Because the only people who actually really do or sell illegal drugs are actually just black dudes. I mean, that's something we all know, right? White people don't smoke and sell pot, of course not. Or crack, or powder cocaine, or heroin. Oh, no, of course not. That's what black dudes do. Again, because of the way we frame facts, because of the way we take things out of context, we change their meaning, and we send a different message even when we aren't saying it. Just like with my opening question, should women be believed? I sent a message with that question without telling you what the message was, because I did not have to tell you what the message was, because I already knew the context. I already knew the context. So all I had to do was just sort of hint at it with my facts. It's just an innocent question. It's just an innocent fact. It's just simply true that black men only make up 6% of the population, about 50% of the murders. I mean, those numbers are just true. I'm sorry. I mean, Ellie, that it actually might hurt your feelings, but that's all it is. I mean, you know, I'm not trying to be racist or anything. I'm just trying to tell you the truth. I'm just trying to tell you the reality. That's how it works on the issue of race and crime and so many other things. That's what we do. That's what so many of us do. We take a little fact. That's the end of the story. No matter how misleading, no matter how much it is out of context, no matter how harmful the message, we don't care. All we say is, but this fact is accurate. The framing of facts, it matters. The context of facts, they matter. They change meaning of words and facts. Context can change everything. So let's stop lying to ourselves about it. One, let's stop lying to ourselves about it. These are the messages that we are sending. They are. So let's stop lying about it. One. Let's go like a little bit deeper when it comes to context. I want to tell you about my brother Butch's crime. Yes, I'm going to tell you more about it. Yes, I said that he actually stabbed a man 48 times. I'm not even really sure that it was 48 times. It could have been 49 or 69 or 29, simply because we actually don't know the exact number, simply because it was that awful. It was hard to count. It was that brutal, that ugly. My brother, my oldest brother did that to another human being. That's a fact. That's a fact. I cannot deny it. Yes, I cannot, say, well, other than maybe kind of sort of like it did not happen. It happened. He did it. He did it. And for a lot of people, that's all they want to know. An awful thing happened. And so that's all we need to know, especially when that awful thing was done by a black dude. That's all we need to know. That awful black dude did this thing. That monster did something monstrous. End of story. Bottom line, case closed. Let's not think about anything else. Let's not talk about anything else. That by itself is so evil that nothing else matters. That's how we also frame these events and stories. That's what we also do. Because it's easy that way. It's easy. This bad thing happened because a bad person did it. So if that's the truth, then therefore there is nothing else for any of us to do. There is nothing that we have to do in order to make things better for anybody. If all it means is that a bad person did a bad thing. And so therefore, that means that all that we have to do is find that bad person, put him in prison. That's it. Nothing else has to change. If only bad people stop doing bad things. That's how we frame these stories often. That's how we frame these stories. It is nice and neat and easy, and it lets us off the hook. Context, 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 context. My brother Muchi. When he was 8 years old, 8 years old, he actually stood in our dark apartment one night by the door. By the corner in the door. This is what my mother, Ellie told me about. He was 8, when she was 8. He was standing late one night in a corner, dark corner of our apartment, with a knife behind his back. and kitchen knife behind his back. Why? Because he actually was waiting on my dad to come home. Why? Because 8-year-old Munchie said that he needed to kill my dad. 8 years old. Why? 8-year-old kid. Why? It is because weekend after weekend after weekend, he had seen his father beat up on his mother. Weekend after weekend after weekend, he had watched my dad get drunk after work, come home, and beat up his mother. And 8-year-old Munchie was too small to stop him from doing it. Weekend after weekend after weekend, month after month, year after year. He saw his mother being beaten by his father. Nobody else was around. Nobody else was coming to help them. Nobody else knew about it. So, in his young mind, his only recourse was to pick up a knife, hide, and try to kill our father. 8-year-old Munchie. 8-year-old Munchie was having to deal with that for his entire young life. Like in fact, like my sort of mom, sort of like stopped him just in time. Stopped him just in time. This is a little boy, right? This is the murderer at the age of 22 who did something awful, and that's the only headline that people want to see. 22 when he did that. 8 years old, week after week, month after month, year after year, dealing with that in the house. He didn't know what else to do. So shortly after that, my dad started beating him as well. Week after week, month after month, year after year. My dad beat my mom and Munchie. Week after week, month after month, year after year. Before he became murderer Munchie. Before he became murderer Munchie, he was a little boy being beaten by his dad again and again and again. In fact, there was that one day, like my father beat him, and she stripped him down. No shoes, no shirt, just underwear, and he kicked him out of the house. And it was actually on a snowy day, ice on the ground. And he actually had to run at least like a mile away, at least to actually get into my aunt's house. Before he became murderer Munchie, that's who he was. That's what he faced. Weekend after weekend, month after month, year after year. That is part of the context of his life. That is part of the context of his life. But for many of us, we don't want to be bothered by that part of the context. Because if we are confronted with that part of the context, then it makes the story more difficult. Then it is no longer just a monster doing something monstrous. It is, well, maybe something else is going on here that we have to think through. It gets much more complicated. And for us, we don't want to do complicated, because it requires something of us. Because we have to think back to 8-year-old Muchie and how many other 8-year-old Muchies there are out there who grow up to be murderer Muchies. A kid faces all this crap year after year. All this crap. No recourse. Nobody's trying to come and save him. Nobody is intervening for him. In fact, in our area, St. Stephen, South Carolina, St. Stephen, South Carolina, kind of like this is roughly about 35 miles or so, like north of Charleston, South Carolina, in the heart of the South. And so actually, when my father was coming up in this area, St. Stephen, South Carolina was known as a so-called sundown town. A sundown town meant that if you were a black person out after dark, there was a real possibility that you could be lynched. That's where he lived and grew up. My dad. My big, strong dad inside the house who beat my mom and my brother outside of the house was the one being abused. Even white kids would come up to my dad. Even white kids called him nigger, spit on him, etc. And all he could do was take it. That's all. His only option was just to take it. Because again, growing up there as a black dude at that time period, had he had he resisted even those white kids doing that to them, to him, he would be in massive trouble. So, you tell me, April 21st, 1982, where did that actually start? Where did it start? When he was an 8-year-old scared kid? Or when my dad was living in a sundown town, getting called nigger and spit on by even white kids? Where did it start? Did it only really happen on that one particular day? Or is there a more complex story there? Where does it start? Muchie went to prison for 32 years for his crime. For what he did to someone else. Nobody went to prison for what they did to him. Nobody went to prison for what they did to his dad. He was held accountable for what he did. But all of those other things have gone unpunished. Nobody has been accounted for. So you tell me, when we talk about this one murder, on this one day in April 1982, are we really talking about one murder? Or are we talking about something else? For many of us, it is really comfortable to only say, that's all it is. But as journalists, our job is to make sure that we make people think about the rest of the story.
We have run out of time, and you have left us with the rest of the story, so, and a lot to think about for sure. There is context, I mean, and that's proof of it, so thank you so much.